Professor Thuli Madonsela, an advocate of the High Court of South Africa, is the Law Trust Chair in Social Justice and a law professor at the University of Stellenbosch, where she conducts and coordinates social justice research and teaches constitutional and administrative law. She is the founder of the Tuma Foundation, an independent democracy leadership and literacy public benefit organization, and convener of the Social Justice M-Plan, a Marshall Plan-like initiative aimed at catalyzing progress towards ending poverty and reducing inequality by 2030, in line with the National Development Plan and Sustainable Development Goals. She is a monthly columnist for the Financial Mail and City Press, and occasionally writes for other newspapers. A multiple award-winning legal professional with over 50 national and global awards, Thuli Madonsela has 8 honorary Doctor of Law degrees, one of which was awarded by the Law Society of Canada. She holds a BA Law from UNISA, a Bachelor of Laws from Wits University, and a Harvard Advanced Leadership Certificate, and has been trained in legal drafting, leadership, strategic planning, scenario planning, gender mainstreaming, mediation and arbitration, and training facilitation, amongst other. Thuli Madonsela was the Public Protector of South Africa from 2009 to 2016. She is credited with transforming the institution by enhancing its effectiveness in promoting good governance and integrity, including ethical governance and anti-corruption in state affairs, through her reports, jurisprudence and on the powers of the public protector, and introduction of ADR. She is the co-founder and one of the inaugural leaders of the South African Women Lawyers Association. Named one of Time 100's most influential people in the world in 2014, Forbes Africa Person of the Year in 2016, and one of BBC's 100 Women, Thuli Madonsela is also one of the drafters of South Africa's constitution and co-architect of several laws that have sought to anchor South Africa's democracy. Her extensive publishing record includes books, learning resources, book chapters and forewords, journal articles, newspaper articles, and papers. She is a sought-after speaker and has presented several memorial lectures, including international memorial lectures for Kofi Annan, John Wendell Holmes, and Oliver Tambo, as well as the Desmond Tutu International Peace Lecture. Prof Madonsela, we are delighted to have you here with us this morning. Thank you for availing yourself to join us. We look forward to the session, and I now hand over to you for the next few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleague, and thank you to the International Relations Department for starting this series of conversations. I'm certain that it is going to be a question of starting with small beginnings, but ending with a dialogue that will be groundbreaking in terms of the issues it will be dealing with. I'm here to talk about young people confronting youth unemployment and leveraging Africa's resources and developing its youth for resilience and global competitiveness. My morning started very well with something that is significant for the discussion we're going to have. You will recall that we're having this discussion in the middle of COVID-19 and the disruption that has been inflicted on us by COVID-19. I started putting together this presentation sometime yesterday by looking at old presentations I'd done on youth unemployment, development, and resilience. In the end, I decided to prepare a new presentation, which I started preparing last night. Then I walked early in the early hours of this morning, prepared it and finished it just after 7. And then I don't know what happened, but it just disappeared. I woke up my son, he looked for it. We looked everywhere, lost files, deleted files, unsaved files. It can't be found. And here am I presenting to you. And I thought this is an excellent example of the fact that life is what happens to us when we have other plans. COVID-19 has been disruptive, but it's not the only disruption we've heard. In fact, it is said that the only thing that is certain in life is uncertainty itself. The one thing I've learned in my life, which helped me again this morning, is that often when one door closes, it is important that you don't moan the closing door for too long, that you miss a chance to find other doors and move forward. In fact, the presentation that I had prepared this morning slightly differs from what I eventually decided to settle on. Youth unemployment has many reasons. But if we look at the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, you would expect that this continent should be doing well, because that's the African dream. That's the vision of this continent that the founders of this continent, like Kwame Nkrumah, had. Also, youth unemployment should not be a problem, given the fact that we are a continent that is blessed with an abundance of natural resources, minerals, land, water, etc. We're also blessed with people. According to UNESCO, our continent is 70% under 30. And when the African Union talks about leveraging the resources we have, it talks about leveraging our natural resources. It also talks about leveraging the youth it also talks about leveraging the youth dividend. And that's why a discussion that talks about both leveraging our resources and developing young people that are resilient and globally competitive is an apt discussion for today. But if we have a great continent with all of these natural resources and youthful exuberance, and we have a great vision of the continent that can be found in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and in Agenda 2063, which looks at what this continent is going to look like by 2063. What is the reality on the ground? Well, the reality of the ground is that there's dissonance between the dream and potential and reality on the other hand. Youth unemployment is severe in this continent. You just have to look at South Africa, the number of people that come from other parts of this continent looking for jobs. And COVID-19, one of the slides I had was showing how COVID-19 has brought to the fore some of those challenges, where at the dawn of democracy, we had queues of hope as people were waiting to vote. And more recently, we had queues of despair as people were waiting for food. And it was clear that there was not going to be enough food parcels for everyone. Why is there dissonance between the continent's potential and the reality on the ground? Well, firstly, I think we shouldn't be asking that question. because there's an African proverb that says, a leopard is chasing us, and you're busy asking me whether, you're busy arguing with me about whether it is female or male. Accordingly, I believe that arguing about why we are where we are or whose fault is it is not different from arguing about whether a leopard that is chasing us is male or female. It's a futile argument. The most important thing is to recognize, where are we? How did we get here? And what do we have in our hands to take us forward? If we look at the African dream as a dying fire that we want to revive, what we need to be looking at is, what log do we have in our hands to revive it? And according to all predictions, young people are the greatest log this continent has. And secondly, our mineral resources are another log we have. We have land, vast amounts of land, oceans, trees, etc. Our biodiversity is unparalleled. So whose move is it to use the logs that we have? Others would moan the problem of African leaders, and they get cheers. I know that if I want to get the loudest cheer at any conference that I address, I should belittle African leaders and blame them for the challenges we have. And of course, they're not to be given a get out of jail free card. But does it help us if we sit there and say African leaders are not leading us properly and we complain that they're corrupt? The first thing is, who is a leader? I would like to believe that anybody can lead. Anybody can lead. And if you disagree with me, I have stories about 3 young people in this who stepped up to lead for the Africa they want. The first one is 9-year-old Stephen Wamukota from Kenya. In the middle of COVID-19, villagers are struggling because they don't have running water. And if you're going to ensure the highest hygienic standards, it's easier when there's a tap and you don't have to keep touching things and then washing your hands and still touching things that may be contaminated. So what did young Stephen do? He invented a hands-free washing machine. It's something that you pedal with your feet, and it has a soap, a liquid soap container, and it has water, a bucket of water, and you press it with your feet, the water comes out, and then you press it again, the soap comes out. A 9-year-old. What distinguishes that 9-year-old from those who only complain? I would tell you that it's an enterprising mind. It's a mind that says, if I want a particular outcome, the next move is always mine. And he has become a global sensation. President Kenyatta has recognized this 9-year-old and has given him a presidential award. Well deserved. And I hope nobody steals the intellectual property of this young one, and that this machine is upgraded, patented, and used globally. At the moment, he's done it with wood, which was the only resources he had. And it can be upgraded. He plans to upgrade it to have a metallic version of it. The second young person from this continent that chose to step up and lead instead of moan lack of leadership from the top or disruption from the bottom. His name is Mzwandile Ndlovu. In the middle of COVID-19, governments have imposed a lockdown. Some, like ours, promised to sweeten the deal with some kind of social relief. And the social relief is food parcels, business support, some loans for businesses, and thirdly, the social relief also includes a 350 rand for those regarded as unemployed. And not everyone qualifies for this, and it takes forever to get it. Mzwandile, who works for John Dory as a sushi chef, was sent home with no pay by John Dory. And he had no guarantee whether he would be called back or this would be the end of him. He remembered that he had always wanted to start a restaurant, but did not have the ability to do so. So with the resources that he had right at home, he started Kasi Food, a township restaurant, which during COVID-19 has made him more money than he was making from his earnings at his former workplace. And he says now, should he be called back to his former workplace, he will go back. He's currently training someone, one of his relatives, to take over. In other words, he has created work for himself and he's creating work for others. That's an enterprising mindset. The last young person that I would like us to think about is Dishel. So Dishel Dai from Mauritania. Dishel Dai from Mauritania I met in London at One Young World. I had the privilege of introducing her. Abused as a child, forced into early marriage as a child, she was a victim of violence. After getting her degree, though, she decided that she wasn't going to escape village life and stay in the city. She went back to the village to educate families and young people about the girl child, to the rights of the girl child, to prevent early marriages and to prevent gender-based violence. Again, what it says is, when there's gender-based violence, yes, we have a right to demand action from government. However, we also have to look at what logs are in our hands to prevent it. Now, what does it take to have this combination of leveraging our resources and developing young people that are resilient and globally competitive? I would say first, it takes an enabling framework. The African Charter on People and Human Rights. It takes national constitutions that are enabling, that provide for good governance, the rule of law, and human rights. Once you have that enabling environment, it takes epic leadership at all levels. If you look at some of the young people that are spoken about, they had an enabling framework, but for example, in Mauritania, the framework itself is not as enabling as we'd like it to be. But it takes epic leadership, and not just epic leadership at the level of government, epic leadership at every level, including a 9-year-old, as we have seen with Stephen Wamukota. Epic leadership, as Tuma understands it, is leadership that is ethical, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do at all given times, not because you're going to be arrested, not because everyone is doing the right thing. Just do the right thing the right way because that's the right thing to do. You set the tone for how life should be. Purpose-driven leadership, that is P. Purpose-driven leadership means aligning everything that you do with the outcomes you want or the future you want. So for Africa, we want a continent that is run ethically. We want life that is purpose-driven. And then the last one is impact conscious and committed to serve.
Waiting in the lobby.
Just finishing the last, just a few pointers on what kind of mentality will take us forward. So you need epic leadership at all levels. enterprising mindsets, an ecosystem that is enterprising. You need Ubuntu, an attitude where we understand that it takes a village to achieve things. And this I have seen in terms of the work that I've been doing under the Tuma Foundation, and also the work that we're doing in terms of the social justice M plan. It takes also a mindset of a developmental mindset among leaders, and a developmental mindset that includes dress, where we understand that some communities are left behind, some groups are left behind, and we help them catch up with the rest. And then lastly, and very important for African young people, we do need to discard the outpost paradigm. That is the paradigm where we see ourselves as an extension of other continents, whether we're an extension of America or Europe or China. We have to see ourselves as an ecosystem, a vibrant ecosystem. And ECOWAS is a good example of how a vibrant ecosystem operates. Just lastly about ECOWAS, one of the things I experienced when I was in Kenya recently was my colleagues, two colleagues who were judges, talking about where they buy vegetables. They consciously buy their vegetables from the market, from the open market. And as they buy, they know where their pineapples come from when they buy fruit. They know where their cabbages come from, their spinach come from. And they consciously buy knowing that they're supporting their ecosystem. And I think for me, in the African continent as a whole, part of developing young people that are resilient and globally competitive is providing a supportive environment where we buy from the continent. And the Africa Free Trade Agreement is going to facilitate that. And lastly, where we are helping and providing services to communities, let us not just always give them food or do things for them. Let's look for the Mzwandiles, Ndlovus in that communities, the decal dyes and the Stephen Wamukotas, and understand that they already are doing things for themselves and they are capable of doing things for themselves. All they need is a hand up. And that's the essence of the M Plan for Social Justice and the Tuma Enterprising Communities Initiative. Thank you. Every generation has an opportunity to make a difference for itself and for future generations. It's the turn of the current young people to make a difference in their lifetime and leave a legacy for future generations. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you, Prof Madonsela. My apologies. I'm just trying to find out where the background noise was coming from. Thank you for addressing us, and I believe the participants who have joined throughout this discussion, welcome to all of you. Please note that this whole discussion will also be made available to you from after this meeting. We will now open the floor for discussion. As mentioned in the beginning, our question and answer session will work in the following way. You will please pose your question in the chat function of this meeting and also indicate your name and the institution you're representing. And we will prompt you to please unmute your microphone and address your question to Prof Madonsela. I will now open the floor. If there are any questions, please raise them. Thank you.
Right. If there are no questions, I can just maybe elaborate on something that I mentioned. And I would like people to engage on that. One of the things that I would like to engage is how do we help young people? Trevor Noah says, give them a fish. Well, no, give them a fishing skills and a fishing rod. The saying was always don't give them fish because they will eat for the day and starve tomorrow. I agree with Trevor Noah that you must give them fishing skills and a fishing rod. But I also agree that you may also give them fish, but try to give them raw fish. Somebody approached me recently about how do you provide food in disadvantaged communities in such a way that there isn't a dependency paradigm. And my advice was, why don't you work with them in cooking the food? Because in so doing, you're encouraging agency, but you're also transferring skills because you're cooking very, very specialized recipes. And these young people may learn to cook the food, and tomorrow they might then just cook the food, and then over time you might just only come and provide them with the ingredients and supervision whilst the young people are preparing the food. How does this help? It boosts their human dignity, their
Can somebody please indicate if it is Prof Madonsela's connection? It seems as if Prof Madonsela has disconnected. We will give 2 minutes to see whether she's able to join the call again or connect again. In the meanwhile, if there are any questions or even comments, this is really to facilitate a discussion more than question and answer sessions. I would like to please invite you to feel comfortable in raising any questions or comments once she has been able to join again. We will give 5 minutes and take it from there. Thank you.
Hi. I apologize. I somehow got offline. Hello?
We can hear you, Prof.
Hello?
Madonsela. We can hear you.
Yes, I apologize. I don't know if there are questions now. If not, I would also want to elaborate on the concept of enterprising communities and enterprising minds. But let's hear if there are any questions first.
Prof. Madonsela, I don't know if you would like to continue to elaborate and wait. I see there is a hand.
Is there a hand?
There's a hand on
Right.
Mr. Kumala, if you can please unmute your microphone and display your video, you're welcome to take the floor.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Money.
Hi, Mama. I just want to ask me on the unemployment issue. So I was speaking to one of my friends, and we're having a conversation about how we think unemployment can be elevated in Africa or in most countries, including South Africa. So our suggestions were about how about we encourage people who are old, for example, old people in positions where those positions can be now transferred to young people to be voluntarily willing to let go of their positions in order for them to create space. And this was now alluded to because young people are completing degrees, are completing their studies, but then now they're fighting against the system of old people occupying those same spaces, which they are also bound to work on. So how do we then create an ecosystem of such where old people are willing to forgo an opportunity for a young person to take part in that opportunity? So I just want to hear from your perspective how do you think that can be and how can we work within our systems and ecosystems of businesses?
Right. May I respond to this one,
Yes.
Ms. Anka? Right.
Please, Prof.
Yeah.
Madonsela, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Kumala, for that question. It is a usual question that I get from young people about can people vacate their positions, the older people in politics, in business, etc. The answer for me is yes and no. Maybe no first. The no part for me is this talk is really about encouraging young people to be resilient. It's about leveraging Africa's resources to develop young people that are resilient and globally competitive. That's why the examples that I gave were the examples of the young Kenyan child, 9-year-old Wamukota, Mzwandile Ndlovu, Dikel Dai, who's created a job for herself. I could even add Ludwig Marishani and many others. For me, I would like us to respond to unemployment at various levels. One is an enabling environment, which is what young people are crying for. So an enabling environment would be laws, policies that support work, whether you're self-employed or employed in companies, and also that encourages a space. If people can take early retirement, that's fine. We would encourage them, and government does that a lot. And then the next requirement is good governance. Good governance is about a government that is able to manage a disaster, that's able to create infrastructure like China did in rural areas. They created in infrastructure to make sure that every business is on the internet, that there were roads. If you are farming in the rural area, or you are printing stuff in the rural area, or you are making clothes in the rural areas, then you're not disconnected from the rest of the world, because you're connected via internet, and there are roads that connect you. Not everyone is then crying to be employed in government. Not everyone is crying to be employed elsewhere. So that's my deal. I am in favor of space being created, but I'm not in favor of a young person being plunked into positions of authority and displaying skills, because that's not creating globally competitive young people is creating a generation of people who will be weak intellectually and technically. But I'm not suggesting again that you need years and years to become technical. Digital citizens are far more technical than we are, because you guys learn things on YouTube. If anything goes wrong, I ask my son, how do you know this? He says, okay, mom, I'm going to check it on YouTube. In 3 minutes, he knows how to fix it. I'm not suggesting you need the same amount of time to get ready, but it should be really horses for courses, not just you get the job because you're young. Then we also need a supportive business environment. At the moment, business is doing a great job with YES, Youth Employment Service. That's a wonderful thing where they're enabling young people to get an opportunity to do some work so that they can learn how things are done. How I manage, for example, has a lot to do with the fact that I come from parents that were entrepreneurial. My mom and dad, when they lost their jobs, my mom lost her job when she got married, and she was a domestic worker. My father lost his job when he got sick. They leveraged whatever they had to employ themselves. But that then taught me that you can manage without having gone to get yourself an MBA. It becomes extremely important then that we understand that young people who come from certain backgrounds that haven't mastered the social muscle of managing and leading in a business environment, they will need assistance to do so. Then lastly, business support for me usually is about either people are given loans or their business is bought. If we're going to create resilient young people and leverage our resources as Africa, I encourage businesses to invest their money in these businesses. Don't buy the business, invest and be what Tuma refers to as a social impact investment partner, SA. It's like a dragon in Dragon's Den or a shark in Shark's Den. So that's my story, Kumalo. I'm saying yes or no, but for resilience, I'm encouraging young people not to be relying on pushing old people from positions. I am saying let's create a bigger cake. Because that's the problem with BE. BE is saying, let's keep the infrastructure that we inherited and push people in. And therefore, there's so much fighting in those little spaces. The alternative way is the Tuma Enterprise and Communities way that says, let's create more vehicles. If this boy, for example, the Kenya young person is creating, Mwamukota has created that machine of his, why don't we invest in that machine? And he's going to grow into a unicorn, a 9-year-old unicorn. And I'm certain in townships and villages we have more. Mzwandile and Ndlovu. Why not have a social impact investment partner who goes in there and invests and makes sure that Mzwandile's kasi food grows big?
Okay, Mama, just to have a conversation with you, man. So I understand what you are saying, and I agree with you very much, because we can't have a giving nation. We can't be a giving nation, because at the end of the day, we won't have anything to give. But my cry now is not because I want to elevate young people from just no position to be in a position, but it's a standing of an understanding of that young people are right now crying. Young people are crying because there's no opportunities, including the businesses they own. I mean, my brother is running a small business as well, and that's how he is now making his living. But the business is not sustainable in terms of he has a market which he knows he dominates. It's a market which is competitive because there's more young people also in the same industry doing what he's doing, which is selling clothes. And it's growing for him, or it's working out, but the competition between them alone is so hard because they're all competing on price and quality. they end up not producing the quality that they need because the environment is not a system, is not enabling for them to now tap into the quality side because the textile industry is also struggling. So it's like an entire domino effect where one industry struggles, then it leads to also the smaller businesses struggling to also pick up or also join in the market and start selling and contributing to the economy. And secondly,
okay. I think we should give other people a little bit of space, Mr. Khumalo. On this one, maybe we can discuss it further at other times. But you're right that government will have to create an enabling policy environment for business. If we're saying we're moving away from a jobs mentality to a work mentality, work means you can create your own business or you can create your own NGO, which is a social enterprise, and you employ yourself and employ others. That means then government and business and bigger business should come in to help you with markets and to help you with financial muscle, and lastly to also help you with social security, because a lot of people don't want to be self-employed because there's no social security. That's why during COVID-19, for example, government has availed social security in the form of UIF to almost everyone, and we thank them for that. But going forward, we'll have to make sure that if you have your own company, you're also able to register yourself for UIF and medical aid and other social security benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khumalo. I would like to also open up the floor for further questions or comments, please. I will leave 5 minutes for that before we end this session. Prof Madonsela, if you agree.
Yes.
All right, I will ask again if there are any questions or comments to be raised. No? Prof Madonsela, I would like to thank you for your time this morning, and especially also a thank you to you for the work that you are doing in creating these enabling frameworks in many ways that you have also discussed with us this morning. So really thank you for that, and we really hope to also engage as much as we can and as much as we are given the opportunity as a youth force to also follow in these footsteps of people who are paving the way for us. So thank you to you, and thank you to all our attendees here this morning. I would like to just remind you that this session will also be available for 48 hours until we have we have ended the session right now. So thank you to everyone who attended, and have a blessed week further. I will end this session now. Thank you.